Okay.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would ask you to please rise for our March 28th special meeting of the Board of Selectmen. And Mr. Kiley, would you lead us in the pledge?
Absolutely. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I will note that clearly we have an absence at the table, and Mr. Tetro had a family emergency and regrets that he is not able to be here with us today. So Mr. Kiley and I will
Carry
move
on.
forward. And we have today a few items that we would like to discuss. We have a few department heads that we've asked to be here for some follow-up questioning. In addition, Linda Gardner and Bob Mayer will be running us through the updated adjustments. I believe that they're gathering some last-minute documents now to bring down for us. So as we wait for them, I know we have with us a number of department heads, including our chief and deputy chief here, our public works director, our director of the libraries. I also see Dr. Title, and our Board of Education chairman as well. So with that, I would open it to questions that we have for the department heads as follows, and I'll turn it over to you.
Do you want to, do you have any particular order you want to go in?
If you want to, I think maybe we should start with the chief and the deputy chief if we could. How about that?
Sure. Do you guys want to come out? Good afternoon, gentlemen. Good.
Thank you for joining us.
Yes, thanks for being here. We had made a request to have some follow-up questions for you guys, and the main question or follow-up item I had to talk about was the new hires in the budget that are wrapped around the new security program for the school. And you guys have done a great job at addressing the issue, and you've done a great job of explaining it to us last week at the Board of Finance meeting. So that all makes sense. I know there's things you can't tell us, and there's things that we need to know, and there's things we don't need to know. So that's all good. My follow-up questions were more on the financial side. Mainly, and I don't know if enough time has gone by to have investigated this, but we're hoping to look at possible alternative ways to find funding if there was anything out there, you know, whether it's the old COPS type grants or whether it's a state or a federal grant. So I think I was the one that had asked the question at the previous meeting, you know, is there any possibility for us to find some partner in this? Because it's a worthy program, and I like the way you have balanced it with the schools and increased communication, and I like what the results I'm hearing of it should be. You know, increased safety, increased communication, and better policing across the entire town and our buildings. So that sounds great, and it's something I can support for sure. But I was just looking for, in light of today's world, is there anything out there that could assist us financially, at least get it off the ground, or help us phase it in or roll it in?
Yeah, first of all, what we always deal with in law enforcement is time and distance. And as time goes by and as we get farther away from events, people sometimes tend to forget, and it's not as current. It's not really right there, out there with you. We don't have the luxury of doing that. So when we approach school safety and school security, you know, way before Sandy Hook, and I use that, obviously that's the most recent case, we've been talking about it beforehand, and you know, ever since that day we've been kind of talking about it and moving forward with some of the conversations with Dr. Title and others. And frankly, some of the things that we look at this new school unit to be doing, we're pulling upon other resources in the organization to do that now. Some of the communication elements, we're trying to get through it right now.
Right.
But to your question with regards to funding, just this morning I got an email, or we received an email from the COPS office regarding upcoming COPS grants.
Okay.
They take a long time, and
Yeah.
moving forward, but we are aware of the fact that shortly, probably within the next month or two, a COPS grant will be offered, and they will put priority towards school resource officers. However, keep in mind that every community in the country will probably be putting forth an effort to get some grant money.
Right.
But having said that, I think that if we were to fill positions, police officer positions now, and budget for them now, I don't know whether we would be eligible then for grant money.
Okay.
So, in lieu of that, I do think that there may be an opportunity to alter some of our requests a little bit.
Oh, interesting.
One of the things that I think is very important and crucial to the way we're going to move forward with this is the sergeant's position. Having a supervisor driving the agenda and managing the unit is very crucial and important, and I think that we need to implement that now. I think in this budget, it's in our budget request, I think it's a $68,000
Go ahead, I can
proposal.
find it.
Yeah, so,
Yeah, that sounds about right.
and I think that that is a crucial point, pivot point to this program. We need a direct supervisor to manage all of our schools. In addition to that, if we were to look at this moving forward on an overtime basis, and I know sometimes people think overtime is a bad word, but overtime does a few things for us. If we were to staff these positions, these 3 positions on overtime, and, you know, look towards the hours of that, I think we could probably get the request down to about 250,000, as opposed to the 311,000. That's hiring the one officer, which would be the supervisor's position right now.
Okay.
We don't have the luxury of waiting for the COPS grant to do that. I think we need that position.
Okay.
But however, those other 3 positions, to do it on an overtime basis, does a couple things for us. It allows us to still implement some really significant security measures, yet at the same time, it doesn't indebt the town to long-term financial burden of these new positions without exploring these COPS funding first.
Okay.
So we can show the federal government in our application for grants, we have a structure in place. We are fulfilling that role now on existing manpower and women officers. But at the same time, we're looking to fill those in the grant application. I think it would put us in a better position to receive federal funding for the positions. I don't think we should wait on, okay, go ahead.
No, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I just don't think we should wait on doing something
Right.
in implementing this process, but I do think that hiring the officers full-time right now without giving the grant process an opportunity to work through might hurt us in the long run.
Okay. So that's fantastic news, and thank you for that creative thinking and all that extra work. So just so I'll understand, because my goal in asking the question is not to defer or delay the program in any way.
Right.
It was just to look at alternative ways to find funding for it. So thank you for that. So the first thing I heard was there's a possibility that if we do the direct hires now ahead of the grant applications, it could preclude us from being grant eligible, should there be one there that we qualify for and are chosen for.
Exactly.
All those
Yes.
things would have to happen.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so that makes perfect sense. And secondly, if we do this kind of combination, bringing in the sergeant to oversee it and filling it with overtime for a grand total of 250,000
Roughly
between both
250.
items,
Yes.
roughly.
Yeah.
In the meantime, it would not slow the program down or deter it, therefore have any negative impact on the school safety.
Yes, it's not
Okay.
ideal. In other words, it's not
Right.
ideal. We believe the program that we put forth was not over the top. Like the town of Enfield or the city of Enfield just spent $450,000 for armed guards in every school.
Okay.
You know, kind of, that's one extreme. And what
Right.
we
For
put.
1 year.
For 1 year, yeah. So what
Wow,
we-
that's an annual number. Okay.
What we put forward was what we believe to be a reasonable approach to this. And so not having those full-time officers dedicated it detracts from that. However, given the fact that the grant is there, I think we should wait for the grant to see whether or not we hire full-time positions. So in lieu of that, if we get the full-time sergeant's position in our budget this year, and blend it with an overtime basis where we hire officers back, managed by that full-time supervisor, we can get close to where we want to be with those full-time positions. It will detract a little bit from it, but it'll still have a presence and it'll have a significant impact on keeping our schools safer, and that's really the ultimate goal. Not just with a presence. Remember, we're doing a blended approach. It's not just having the presence there, it's having officers integrated and problem-solving with things that crop up. Things are cropping up daily.
Right.
We had a meeting with Dr. Title today on some issues that we're dealing with, and, you know, and again, to get ahead of some curves and to prevent problems in the future. So, again, that's ideal, but I think if we approach it from this perspective, we'll save a little bit of money in the short term. We'll save long-term liability on the part of the town, you know, hiring employees without taking a break and exploring this COPS grant.
Right. And we still have the opportunity to use the grant money down the road to hire the officers if that's available. And we still also have the opportunity, should that not work out, to revisit this and hire them directly ourselves. Because, I mean, if my only choice was to hire the officers and implement everything that you've talked about, then I support that. I support the program, and I support the way you've approached it and the way it safeguards our schools and our town. And I know it's a program that you've had working for a very long time, well before last December, and things have, you know, escalated since that point in time nationally. So that's all good news, and as long as we aren't hurting the program significantly or even materially, and we can go ahead and take these steps, it sounds like it's a great compromise type program, and I would thank you very much for coming up with it. I mean, that's great work.
Yeah, we'll look to modify. Obviously, there's other boards that still have to go and approve it, but our approach will be now requesting one full-time position, that position of a sergeant.
And the other 170 or so is the overtime.
And then the other
difference.
The difference would be to staff those with overtime.
Okay.
Overtime positions. Keep in mind all the questions that do come up. The overtime does not go towards officers' pensions, so it doesn't increase our pension liability. What it does is it gets officers in the schools at a time when we believe we need them.
Okay.
So that's, and yet at the same time, our approach will cut back our request for about $50,000, $60,000 this year, because there's the potential for the COPS grant. And we'll look towards other ways for funding. We've met with Dr. Title again today on other matters, saying, is there any state programs and state funding that we can get to fund it?
All I can say is thank you.
Okay.
Anything further on that?
No, I'm good. That's good. That's good news.
And I actually have a couple follow-ups. I'd just like to echo the thanks for your, just the transparency, the hard work, the creativity, all of that is very much appreciated. I would actually ask, we do have a number of boards who are going to be reviewing this, obviously starting here at this table, but recognizing that the Board of Finance is coming up on Tuesday, and they probably won't have an opportunity to have a conversation with you again, and then the RTM will. If these funds are cut in their entirety, what, and I don't remember this being asked, so forgive me if it was, but what would be the alternative? Have you talked about that at all with Dr. Title in terms of if there is no sergeant position that is supported by all the town bodies and the overtime that you're requesting for the officers is not supported, what's the alternative for us?
Yeah,
if I could, probably what our footprint is right now. Right now we have a certain number of officers out there, our entire patrol force, that are taking every opportunity to write reports at schools, in parking lots, signing off there. On any given day, we may have 15 to 20 visits to a school, but on some days it dwindles to almost nothing, depending on our call for service activity. We continue with our intelligence gathering aspect, kind of all of us just kind of pitching in, and when we see things in the community that might have relevance to the school system, we make notifications, we sit down, we talk about it, we share information. But we're really hoping for a more coordinated effort in all of that.
We have a vulnerable population of over 10,000 individuals in our community, and we can't hide from the fact that what occurred in Newtown could occur anywhere. I'm not saying that it will. And time and distance, people oftentimes think, well, it won't happen. We don't have that luxury. We believe that because there's a vulnerable population, we have to expand our reaches and have a better public safety approach to that population. If we don't, we can't expand where we're at, and it becomes what we've been doing all along. We've been doing the best we can. However, it begs to say that this vulnerable population needs some attention from law enforcement. And I'll go back to what we talked about with traffic safety, just to use that as the model, and that's why we use that as the model. One of our core functions is traffic safety. We dedicated a group of individuals overseen by a sergeant to handle that and to address those issues. As a result, we've seen an 11% decrease in motor vehicle accidents. So we've seen what a dedicated group of officers can do to problem solve and to address problems in our community. Now when you look at our population of students and employees and town employees, Kevin, you mentioned the town buildings too, that's a vulnerable population. And this will allow us to address that in a better approach. So if we do not pursue that, we'll meet with Dr. Title and look towards some of the safety measures that he could put in place, but our public safety role will be limited to what it is now. And that's really kind of a hit and miss, stopping at the schools if we can, but there will not be that dedicated approach to making the schools safer.
So there will be no other resources that you'll redeploy? You don't have other resources that you can say, we'll still create this task force from within?
Yeah, it's
what we
difficult
have?
to do. I mean, we have a traffic safety unit that's dedicated to traffic safety. Do we not want traffic safety in town? And that's a really crucial part of our function. Do we not want burglary detectives? Do we not want DARE officers? Where do you not want patrols? Where do you want us to dedicate the resources to do it? I think it would be hard pressed to find the resources elsewhere to do it. Not saying that we wouldn't try, but it would be difficult to do that.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time here today. Do you have any other follow-ups?
No, ma'am.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
very
guys.
much.
Thank you.
Okay, I think next perhaps we can talk to our town librarians, if we may. I think there were a couple questions, and thank you, Karen Ronald. Oh, thank you very much.
Thanks, Karen.
And Karen, if you could tell everybody in the viewing public as well who you are, so everyone, I think
Sure.
most people know who you are, but
I'm Karen Ronald. I'm the town librarian here in Fairfield, and this is the deputy town librarian who sits at the branch, Nancy Coriati.
welcome to both of you.
Welcome,
Thank
ladies.
you for being here.
Looks like we'll
I'll
start.
turn it over to you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Kiley. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, thank you for being here, ladies. Nice to see you. Before we get into this 2013 stuff, I just wanted to take 1 minute and take a step back. Specifically, a step back to last Thursday's Board of Finance meeting. Personally, I've been doing this for 20 years on the volunteer side, and there's been many a meeting I've gone to when I've gone home afterward and haven't felt that good about the meeting, about what happened or what the vote was or whatever the case was. And that was pretty evident to me Thursday night, that Thursday's meeting was, a bit too contentious than it needed to be. So in reference to that, I look back at it and I think about, I'm speaking to myself. I have higher expectations of myself, and I have higher expectations of our government as I participate in. And I don't think I met them last Thursday night, to be honest with you. There's a couple things. One I would call my tone of voice I used a couple times. And the other thing was me agreeing to previously made comments probably a bit too aggressively. And for those things, I'd like to apologize to you ladies, okay? I think that meeting could have gone better. We have questions about the library, and that's fine. But I think the meeting could have gone better, and I accept my responsibility for it. And my apologies to you. With that said, there's a saying I like, and that saying is, it's not what you did, it's what you do. And in this particular case, I'd like to find a way to do something about this. And my thought is, and I've spoken to Mr. Tetro about this, and he needs to opine, the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance and the RTM need to opine on this as well. But the information that we received last Thursday indicated to me that we're under budget in the current year because we haven't hired some positions, or you guys have done a good job at saving money on some other lines. And that's wonderful news. That's great news. So my thought to Mike was, and I spoke to him last week about this on Friday morning, after the day after our meeting, was, why can't we move a few things around right now, take some of those dollars, and find a way to put the hours back? You know, I don't know how we would do it, and I know it's harder to do than I can explain sitting here. And it's going to take a lot of effort and scheduling and organization skills to get it done. But I think in the end, the biggest issue anyone had was the library not being open. I mean, we all love to go there. My wife goes there 3 times a week with my kids, right? So, I mean, that's the crux of the matter. That's the only bone to pick that I had, and I think anyone I've ever spoken to has about the whole matter. So my thought was, and Mike, we need to talk about it with you folks, is can we move the pieces around the chessboard this year, find a few dollars, restore the hours? You know, and I don't know how you would do it. Maybe it's one less person behind the counter. I don't know how you would do it, but I'm sure you can do it. I'm confident that you have the skills to do it, I should say. So I'm offering that as a solution. Now, there's other issues. Who has to approve it? How do you do it? How do you man it? Does it go beyond July 1st? You know, do we have issues next year? They're all real issues, and they're all important. But I think if we work together, we can figure something out, and we can make it work both in the short term and going forward. Because that's all we want. We want the library to be open. You know, and I know that's what you ladies want, and I know that's what the people want, and I think that's what the Board of Finance wants as well, and the Board of Selectmen. So I want to throw that out there as a potential. Mike thought it was an okay idea, but talk to him about it,
Right.
Mr. Tetro. So thank you for your time on that, and thank you for your time last Thursday night. I do appreciate everything you ladies do and your whole teams do. My only question really on the budget, I haven't had a chance to look at this particular thing, and this is the breakout by branch that
Yes.
that Mr. Walsh asked for. So I don't think I need to address that now because I haven't had time to even read it. My question is kind of a follow-on to the funding of next year's budget to keep the hours open. And I know you can't answer it now because you haven't gone through the process.
Right,
So it's kind of a theoretical question.
Right.
You know, can we try to work together, whether we do this or don't do that, or delay this or don't delay that, to find a way that if we are able to get the hours restored, which I think is, I'm hopeful that it's a reasonable choice, can we find a way to continue it? I mean, we don't know where we're going to be the first Tuesday in May after the RTM votes,
Right.
and I can't predict that. But hopefully, whatever the result of that is, there'll be some pieces that we can move so that any progress we've made up till that point, if we're able to do that, we could continue on for next year. And keep the doors open, which I know is your ultimate goal as well, right?
Yeah, we were very disappointed to have to have closed the hours we did, and, you know,
Right.
the biggest thing we do as librarians is we try to be the best for our community. So I'm with you on this. If we can figure out a way, I'm more than appreciative that this offer has been made. I don't know with the staffing and the union contracts, how we work something like that out if we were to lose a position. That's up to other people,
Right.
Mr. Tetro, HR director, all those people.
There's a
But
lot
I'm
of
willing
stuff.
to look at that.
Yeah.
And the only other thing I would say is the only other line item that's large and might be able to be reduced, which hurts a librarian, but is the library materials
Right.
line. We don't
Right.
have big lines other than that line. So
Right.
those are the only two
Right.
solutions I can see. And I
Right.
would love to keep it, I'd love to open it tomorrow, and I'd love to keep it open next
All day
year.
and all
and-
night.
Well,
I'm with you.
no, or at least get the hours back we've had for a long time, and
Right.
people have really responded to those hours.
Right. And just to be clear, I don't
Right.
have the authority to make the
Right.
offer or implement the
Right.
decision. It was just a
Sure.
bulb that went on Friday morning, and I called Mike and we talked about it. It
Right.
was like, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
So, thank you for listening. Thank you for coming out. I appreciate that. And thank you for your service.
Well, thank you.
Appreciate that.
I have a follow-up, but
Sure.
before I follow up, I actually would just like to thank you, Selectman Kiley. I thought that what you did here today was a real sign of leadership, and I really appreciate that, and I'm
Well, thank
grateful
you.
for that. And I think that we do all do our best in our service, and some days we have good days and some days we have bad days. So that was wonderful.
Thank you, ma'am.
I just wanted to follow up with you with respect to the library materials, because after the conversation on Thursday,
Right.
it's very clear that there are only so many places, and obviously, as in many of these budgets, we just had the chief and the deputy chief here, we're talking about personnel. And we are talking about what we are and are not able to do there. We know it takes a certain amount of personnel to have the libraries open, and so the library material budget is an area that I think a lot of us look at, and we're also trying to weigh, hearing what you're saying,
Yeah.
what can we do? So to that end, if I'm looking at the library materials budget and saying, I would prefer to have the doors open, at what point, and I don't have that budget actually in front of me,
I have it.
forgive me, which page are we?
Page 242.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
So if we are looking at library materials, the budget is $657, and last year's approved budget at $629.9. How much of that have you spent so far this year? And my apologies that I
Linda
don't.
might
Do you have a sense? And
I don't-
and will you plan to spend up
Yeah.
to the amount that you, other
Yeah.
than the amount you were asked to?
Yeah, what happened was the reason the difference between 629 and 657 is there was a transfer from the monies we didn't expend the last year, because we have an agreement that we are continuously buying materials for the community, so we don't stop at any one particular date, and we don't know when they're all going to be in. So that's why there is that, difference between the 629 and the 657. It's hard for us to predict exactly what we're going to spend. We have a budget. We always live within that budget. We've never gone over it. I have to say, if you look at a population of 60,000, 657,000 isn't, it's not $20, a resident. So we do use our dollars wisely. If it becomes a difference between having the staff to get the materials on the shelves and, welcome the people and do the technology and all the programs, I'd be much more comfortable taking a hit on the library materials line. I think we get discounts, we manage this budget well, but I think for the sake of having good library service, I think we could probably absorb a cut there.
Well, thank you for that. And I think, I'll speak for myself, but I think Selectman Kiley and certainly members of the Board of Finance, is what I heard last night. I think my sense is that I personally would be happier to go without some materials to still be able to take advantage of the wonderful service at the library, so.
And I think
I
when
appreciate
it comes to staffing, it's not just one desk. You have to think about, we serve the teens in the teen area, we serve children's in the children's area, we serve circulation. Anyone who comes and checks a book out in circulation and references where the questions are asked. And all this business has gone up incredibly with the economic downturn. People turn to their library because it's a shared resource and it's run quite efficiently. And that's the way we handle these, these hard times. People don't pay for their books all the time. They can't afford for entertainment and cultural activities, and they lean on their library for that. And we've seen tremendous growth in our, in our usage. So
Well, thank you. Is there anything else that you wanted to follow up?
No, I'm good. Thank you, ladies, very much.
I appreciate your comments.
Thank you,
I think
ma'am.
we're all
I
working
appreciate
for
your
the
hard work.
same thing.
Thank you. Thank you both for being here.
Nice to see you, Kristen.
Thank you. Okay, I think at this point, we will move on to
Public Works?
to questions for the Public Works Department. Gentlemen, if you'd like to join us up
You
here.
should start there, because I have to.
Thank you.
Gentlemen? No snow today.
It's
a rarity this year.
It's still early in the day yet. If you would introduce yourselves for all those who.
It's supposed to be spring. You're supposed to be fixing roads, not plowing snow.
Yeah, really.
Right?
I'm Scott Bartlett, Superintendent of Public Works.
Joseph Michelangelo, Director of Public Works.
Thank you
Thanks,
both
guys.
for being here. So we talk a lot about paving. I can remember being on the RTM and one late night, Rich White doing a road paving presentation. This was probably 5 years ago. So I wanted to actually ask you if you could just give us an update as to where you are this year. I recall at the Board of Finance meetings,
Current year.
you talked about the fact that the storm, and Chris DeWitt might be chuckling now because we're going to talk about Sandy again, and Nemo, that the impacts of those have impacted the paving scheduling and perhaps spending. I wanted to clarify that, if you could.
Sure.
Is the schedule of paving that was planned for this year achievable? And likewise, the spending that goes along with it.
Okay. You want me to start? Or are you?
Sure.
Starting with the current budget, due to the impact of Sandy and the blizzard that some people call Nemo, we have approximately $619,000 left in capital for paving that we will not expend.
690?
619.
19th, sorry.
And we will not expend that. That money is necessary to cover the costs of those storms. Even with FEMA reimbursement, the cost of those storms in winter has put us to a point where we need that funding. So there's 600 and change out of this current year. Then with the bond being closed and now everything put into the budget, we'll stand by the request for $3.5 million for years 2013-14. And there's some talk about that potentially being cut.
Can I?
Go ahead.
But now, when you say there's 619 left that hasn't been used in the current year paving line,
That's
does that mean it's unused and available, or has it been used for something else storm-related that makes it unavailable?
It is currently available, but at this point, due to us desiring to bring our budget in on target, we feel that's the only pocket of money we have that will offset Sandy and Nemo costs, so therefore it will be used for that versus paving.
So it's the former. So it's, okay. So that would indicate to me that in rough numbers of the $2.5 million of paving expense in the budget, you're using roughly 1.9 of it, and the other $600,000 is going to other necessary items, storm-related, et cetera.
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the follow-up with that in terms of the storm-related items that we're paying for now, are those items that we anticipate reimbursement from FEMA on at some point in the next fiscal year?
Well, we anticipate reimbursement, and I think we're going to take credit for that reimbursement, but once again, that's at generally 75% of the total cost, so there is a direct impact on our town budget. And another way, at the end of the year, we have to balance our bottom line,
Understood.
and that's how that's our flexibility to balance it. When we overexpend some items. So, and we were just doing that this past week. As we went to the the 2/3 point of the year, where we took inventory, which accounts are over, which accounts are less, and yeah, there are quite a few that are over. And once again, that's the only way we could come in on the bottom line to to find the reductions to pay for that. And when we get closer to the finish line, we'll know if indeed all of that if we can't do any more paving this fiscal year until July 1st, but that's the worst case, and that's what we're planning on right now.
Okay. Do you have another follow-up?
I do, if you
Go
don't mind,
ahead. No,
please.
go
Okay,
ahead.
so
Absolutely.
if we follow that scenario and you're unable to do any paving between now and June 30th, that would mean that, in theory, there's $600,000 of paving that you were unable to do for legitimate reasons. I'm not questioning that. And if we think about that in terms of if that $600,000 is reimbursable by FEMA at 75%, that's $450,000. So that would indicate to me that, well, let me ask the question. If we look at next year's paving budget for $3.5 million, assuming there's no other anomalies that would cause a similar situation next year, would you then be anticipating doing $4.1 million of paving in the next fiscal 12 months? Or would you be anticipating doing $3.5 million worth of paving in the next fiscal 12 months. Can you do 4.1? Would you want to? Or is 3.5 an okay number and you can live without that piece that you didn't get done this year?
He knows me, I'll take the 4.1.
Well, that's why I'm asking him.
But the reality is, I can lay out a formula that shows you how we'll expend the 3.5 for this year, and I can marry that number for the next 2 or 3 budgets to show you that it's real. Already we're getting calls, and we haven't even released the public list yet,
Yeah,
and
right.
people want their streets done, and the reality is they need to be done, and we don't have the money for it. So I don't think it's a bubble. I don't think we're here to say it's 3.5 and it goes away. It's 3.5, and I feel we have the work for the next at least 2 or 3 budgets at that rate. So to answer your question, I think if that money was found again somehow, we could pump it up to 4.1 and fix the roads in Fairfield, yes.
Because the work that was planned to be done, if you think of your home, it's like, it's like siding or roofing or hot water heater. Just because we didn't do it doesn't mean that it doesn't need to be addressed.
I understand that, and let me ask my question a little bit differently. Let's assume that we can't do the I'm calling it 450 because that's the 3/4 of what you spent and you might get back. So I think net it's closer to 450 than 6, because the 150 I think is gone, right? So call it 450. If you had to live next year with the 350, because I was on the Board of Finance, as was Mr. Mayor, I believe, maybe not, when we made the original deal with you guys to move at the RTM's request, and I don't remember all the numbers, but it was get the paving out of capital expense and get it into the operating budget, but it was a difficult year, so we bonded a number, I think it was 5 point something, to get a big chunk done over 2 or 3 years. And then we had an agreement to layer in $1, $2, $3 million to get up to a relatively constant level of 3.5 and keep it there. And that was the gist of it, and that was the gentleman's agreement that we've honored up to this point in time, which I would still honor. I'm not saying that. My question is, if you had to live with that one-time reduction of the 450,000 and only have 3.5 next year and 3.5 the year after and 3.5 in subsequent years, how devastating would that be to your overall program over 3-5 years? And is it something that you could work with or work around?
I think if the question...
Is that kind of what you were asking?
No, slightly different.
Okay,
So
I'm
I'll
sorry.
let you start, and then I'll follow up with that.
If the 600,000, which I understand you're equating to 450 based on potential FEMA reimbursement.
Roughly, yeah, right.
But my fear is it's not going to equate to that, because this is overages that aren't going to be FEMA eligible, that were driven by the byproducts of the storm.
it's a smaller number.
Yeah, it's a smaller number.
Okay, all right.
But to answer your question, I think that single impact is one thing. If we were to compound it with an additional cut in the 3.5, then I think it's getting dangerous. I don't believe right now just the single cut, not being able to finish that money for this year, is something that's too big of a hill to climb. But I think a continued cut in the future could cost us.
Right, and just to be clear on that, I wasn't referring to compounding it or continuing. I was referring to making 3.5 the number for 13-14 and 3.5 the number going forward. But potentially, I'm just thinking out loud here, I really haven't discussed this in any great detail, but potentially, let's say we knew of that 600,000, let's say we knew we were going to get 300K back. That's a good number, we know it. I wouldn't even consider moving to 3.5 down and walking away from that agreement unless I knew that whatever the proceeds were from the 600, call it 300, we're going back into paving.
I got you.
That's what I'm saying. So in that scenario, if the number was 300, maybe I could live with going to 3.2, knowing that I'm going to plug that 300K back in when I get it, and then you're back at 3.5. You still have the blip behind you,
I'm with
but
you.
you're not double counting it, you're not continuing it.
And to that point, then yes, because I'm not getting cut twice. If I'm taking 300,000,
That's
and
what I
it-
meant.
and it- then I can look
Okay,
at that.
I'm just trying to understand the math. Okay, thank you.
Right, and that is in part, that was part A of my question. It's exactly, if depending on what happens with those funds and reimbursements, what might or might not be available. There are no guarantees, I recognize that. And there are no guarantees with the budget, as we know, it goes through the whole process, and that's partly why I requested that you come today, and thank you for that.
No problem.
Was because that is a line item, there was an agreement, I was on the RTM during that time as well.
That's correct.
and wanting to try and understand what any potential cuts to that line would do, given what you said about this past year.
Right.
And I think that helps me to understand. So,
It gives me some clarity on the big picture. Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
okay. I don't have any other follow-up questions for you, Mr. Kiley. Do you?
I can quickly check. I had one question on the Public Works capital requests, which are significantly reduced by about $1.1 million from your original request. Something came up in discussions. Let me find it. Oh, it was the two brush buckets. There's $18,250 a piece, and there's two of them. So can you just briefly explain to me, what they do and, what the impact could be if you only got one of those?
Yes.
In year one and maybe one in year two or something like that?
Yes.
Yeah.
The town is fortunate enough to have 4 payloaders. They have what we call a straight conventional bucket. It is a singular use bucket that loads dirt like everybody would equate with a regular payloader. We then went out over the past budgets and got a Versa bucket, which has a V, and it basically is a pincher, if you will. And when brush and stuff comes down, you're able to squeeze that and put it on trucks.
Okay.
The problem we're having is that's not really the best device in terms of withstanding the work we put it through and loading the trucks, because when you pinch it like that, you're now trying to put it on the side of a truck, but the debris is the opposite direction of the line of your truck body. So it becomes very awkward. You're not getting full capacity on the trucks. We're not productive as we'd like to be. The buckets we are referring to take the standard bucket and it literally opens more like a claw. So now we can claw that material, square off to the side of the truck, and put it in. So from traffic perspective, from a mechanic's perspective, from productivity, in terms of volumes, we feel it's an extreme advantage to us.
And just the term the guys use is it has the thumb. So if you think about how your hand is useful, that's what this bucket does. It's able to grapple things. It makes the machine more efficient.
Okay. And that's great, thank you. If you got 1 versus 2, does the world end, or?
The world does not end.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Follow up on that, the 2 older units that have been extensively repaired, are they the other
They are.
units
They are the
you're
other type?
referring
Okay.
to? Okay,
Good.
so I was thinking, can we sell those off for any profits of
Or do
any
you want my
kind
IT
to offset the?
my IT guys takes the old things and Frankensteins
Put
them
some-
together and make one good
We can't
one.
do that in this case, can we? Thought I'd ask, okay.
No problem.
Worth a try.
All right, any other questions?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
for
Thank
being
you
here
for your
today.
time as well.
Very much, okay. I see that we do have some other department heads here. I
have-
also,
No, I had no questions.
okay, I think what we'll do at this point is I will turn it over to Mr. Mayor to go through the adjustments to the budget and the most up-to-date numbers, and to walk us through that, and
Is
we'll go
there-
from there.
Which
It should
document are
be-
we looking at? The one that was on our
This-
table, or the
it
one that's
should
in
be.
Mr. Mayor's?
No document.
There were
We have a
documents?
presentation, then we can address the document if you have questions. But the first what I'd like to do is there's 3 handouts that are going to be handed out at the Board of Finance meeting this evening that I want to make sure you guys have.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Okay.
One would appear self-serving. It is the
Thank you.
comparative chart of the finance department staffing by town, by similar population size. One was,
Let me pass them along.
I'll leave the rest out for the public.
one is a request from the Board of Finance,
Thank you.
Board of Selectmen joint meeting as to what were the first Selectmen's adjustments to the budget last year to make up for the cut by the RTM of the contingency reduction, cut in contingency by RTM. And the other is the latest and greatest variance analysis through the 8 months, February of 28th of this year.
For the, just for the department? No. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, the last document you handed out is...
Variance analysis for the 8 months ended, which shows, given, like, for example, you just heard the Department of Public Works discuss what they're trying to do to make their budget come in on target. Assuming that everybody does what they're anticipating, is able to accomplish their operations and their savings and they're anticipating, assuming our evaluation, a very diligent evaluation done by Caitlin Bossy, the controller, and Linda Gardner, the budget director, Juliana Santiago, the senior accountant, and myself. And FEMA makes it very complex and makes it difficult to get a handle on the hundreds of different object code accounts that we have. But given that work, this is our best estimate of where we think we are today.
Okay. Got it. Thank you, sir.
Okay. What the first selectman asked me to do was to take you through a walk down the trail from the initial 6.38 tax percent increase in the initial first selectman's budget down to the current 4.36%, which is the document that you received today. As I stated in my initial presentation to the Board of Finance way back when, the budget process is a work in process and the numbers do change over time. The process started in September and is not completed until the RTM votes the end of May. The budget is a work in process for several reasons. One, the budget preparation process starts early and there is limited town current information at that time. Two, there are accounts on both the revenue and expenditure side of the budget that are very uncertain in the early stages. Examples would be the governor's budget, healthcare costs, any salary and wage and benefit adjustments that may accrue from labor negotiations would be examples. Lastly, the budget is a learning process, and hopefully we get wiser as we continue our efforts. One thing to point out, everybody's focused on the 6.38. It should be remembered or acknowledged that the original department head's budget was about 7.38, and the first selectman actually cut about 1% before it went, before it was published. Okay, walking down the line, the trail now, from the original 6.38 to the current 4.36, I'd like to first go through revenue. Revenue estimates are a combination of the receipts that will be realized from state grants, non-tax revenues, fee-for-service revenues, building department, town clerk's office, etc., and tax collections. Following other changes that have been made to the revenue side. Three major categories. First category was town dump and conservation department revisions, representing an unfavorable change totaling $110,000. These changes were resulted from a combination of pencil sharpening by conservation and operational adjustments in the town dump budget, which were offset by savings on the expense side. There's approximately $250,000 unfavorable change for accounts that were carried over from last year's budget, but upon examination, it's clear these numbers were overstated. Additionally, included is the third item in the operational subset is about $200,000 increased revenue from building permits as there is expectation for increased activity from Storm Sandy. The net of these operational adjustments has an unfavorable impact of $165,000. The tax impact of these adjustments would be an increase in the tax rate increase of about 0.04%, which by themselves would bring the tax increase up to 6.42%. The two largest revenue items, going to the second and third of the major categories, are changes in the tax collection rate and inclusion of an accrual for assessment appeals. First, in regard to the change in the collection rate. When we initiated preparation of the 2014 fiscal year budget, we had the working papers of the prior year, which showed an initial tax collection rate estimate of 98.63% was used in the preparation of the fiscal year 2013 proposed budget. At that time, we had discovered that the tax collector reports from prior years did not adjust for tax overpayments. In fact, fiscal year June 30, 12 was the first year the town accrued a liability in our financial statements for tax overstatements. That accrual was $575,000. Additionally, at that time, as a result of the conversion to the QDS tax software and new personnel in the tax collector's department, we did not have consistent information from the department as to historical tax collection rates. Given this, we took the 98.63 collection rate as a starting point and reduced it to account for overpayments. In early March of this year, the tax collector's office provided us with the updated information and historical information, the best estimate they could develop. And this new information, for the last 3 years of information, led us to increase the tax collection rate from 98.52% to 98.83%. This resulted in a favorable dollar change of $908,000, or a favorable tax increase of 0.30%. The final significant adjustment to revenue results from our continuing efforts to improve our accounting policies towards a more GAAP-based policy within the guideline of the GASB rules. As a result of the property revaluation in 2010 grand list, a small percentage of residential and commercial property owners appealed their assessments. Some of these appeals will not be adjudicated until fiscal year 2014. Some will be successful, and the town will be required to reimburse the successful applicants for taxes they paid in 2012 fiscal year and 2013 fiscal year. Because a portion of any required reimbursement will be for fiscal years 2012 and 2013, it's appropriate to record that liability as of June 30, 2013. I spoke with our Cohen and Resnick audit partner, who stated that he was unaware of anyone in Connecticut doing this, but that properly documented and estimated it would be a reasonable accrual. Therefore, we do plan to accrue this item in our fiscal year 2013 financial statements, we were able to reduce the tax revenue requirement for fiscal year 2014 by an additional estimated $710,000. The combination of this accrual, the change in the tax collection rate, and the operational changes combined reduced the proposed tax rate increase by 0.56%, thereby reducing the 6.38% proposed increase to 5.82%. I'm going to move from here on to expenditures, unless you'd like to ask some questions on the revenue side now.
I would.
Go ahead.
I would, please. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for those explanations, and I understand all of them. I have a couple questions on that very last one. I understand the principle that you're taking the $710,000 and you're accruing it into this year.
Yes, sir.
What impact does that have on our fund balance at the end of the current year, or the percentage of surplus that we would have at the end of the current year? I know it's not a cash item, but it needs to be accounted for as a liability. So how do you account for that?
As a liability, as an expense, if you look at the document I handed out earlier, that's a variance analysis, you'll find it is second to the last line item on the page,
Okay.
or third to last line item.
So this 710 and now I see
Yes.
it over here. So
Yes,
this 710 carries over here with that negative impact on the year-to-date 8-month figures, still netting to 365 to the positive.
Yes, sir.
That's how they tie.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Got it. Does that make, is that
Yep,
good?
no, I
Yeah.
had the same question.
Yep, I didn't see how it went from here to here.
Perfect.
Okay.
So even though it's a non-cash item, it's accounted for here kind of as
Yes.
if it was?
Yes.
Just
We're
for,
kind of it's kind of like similar to what Malloy's trying to do in a way. I mean, it's trying to adjust our accounting records to be a little bit more like GAAP, as long as we stay within the GASB rules and guidelines and regulations.
yeah, I understand and support that matching principle, which makes perfect GAAP sense. As long as the analysis and the support for that, as the auditors did mention to you,
Right.
do support that number fully without much variance, then it sounds like something reasonable to do, right?
Right.
Okay, thanks.
Welcome. All right, moving on to expenditures. The most material revision on the expense side of the budget is from improved healthcare experience. The claim experience for the town and the Board of Ed at the beginning of this fiscal year was significantly greater than projected. The original budget is based upon that experience. The healthcare adjustments in the updated budget proposal are from two sources. First, improved experience. When activity was updated through February of 2013, we had a favorable that resulted, using that new information, resulted in a favorable change of $1,630,000. Additionally, Dr. Title and the first Selectman issued an RFP earlier in the year to determine if we could reduce healthcare costs through that process. Savings from the bidding process has resulted in a favorable change in the budget for next year without changing from Anthem. There's some other changes which would be transparent, but without changing, which would, transparent's not the right word, which would not impact the covered
The current
employees.
administration, the current administrator.
Current, same administration, some different stop-loss numbers, some different administrative cost numbers, so no impact to the plan, design, policy, or administration to the employees.
Or the
That's what I was
networks or
trying
any
to
of that
say.
fun stuff.
Right.
Got it.
Or the network. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. That resulted in a $743,000 potential change. The total impact of these three changes, the third one being with the change in the union contracts, these increased in $125,000 co-premium from the employees covered by the contracts that were negotiated between the initial start of the budget period and now. So the total impact of those changes generated a favorable tax impact of 0.98%. The second largest expenditure revision is from the contingency account. The contingency account was reduced by $662,000 to adjust the budget for anticipated employee turnover potential savings. This amount is approximately equal to the fiscal year 2012 savings, and based upon a review of the year-to-date activity, seems to be a reasonable estimate for this year, therefore maybe for next year as well. As Mr. Kiley can attest, this is an adjustment that I clamored for when I was on the Board of Finance, but didn't have enough information at the time of the original budget to calculate a number. So that's why we have that number in there now. The favorable tax impact of that adjustment is 0.26%.
Okay.
The third largest expenditure?
No, that's fine, that's fine, go ahead.
Do you mind,
No, go ahead.
Mr. Kiley? I have a
Oh,
question there, I
thank you.
think.
You just lost me. I'm looking at the grouping. I know the 343 plus the 400 get you to the 643 in the administration of the health plans.
Oh, the health plan, we got a ton of numbers in there, don't we?
But you mentioned 1.6. That's the 1.3 plus, what other number is it? I'm not seeing,
There's...
I just don't know which one's that up to the 1.6.
Yeah, no, there's, I don't have a copy of that.
May I make a suggestion? After you finish your general comments, if we could actually run through
Go through yes.
the sheet, that would be
Oh,
very helpful.
that's fine.
Yeah.
And
I think
I'm
that's.
good about
Theoretically,
that.
they will add up.
Okay, cool. Let's hope, right?
The sheet that we are looking at right now is the potential adjustments to the fiscal year 14 budget. Were there copies available? I thought there were copies that were available for the public.
Yeah, there were 10 or 15 copies brought down here, I think.
Okay.
I'm good. I just didn't see the matching. Please, go ahead.
All right. The third largest expenditure account adjustment was when we got the finalized numbers for the pension plan and OPEB from the final actuarial evaluation results. That was a savings, net savings to the town of $271,000, or a favorable tax impact of 0.13%.
Okay.
The fourth largest actually were director's result of Mr. Kiley's question about the savings in the fire department.
Oh, on the overtime. Right.
Because the overtime,
Yeah.
because of the pension, because so many people took pension, what's the savings in next year's budget
Due to the-
because people are coming in at lower rates?
Right. So,
Right.
yeah,
So
thank
that
you.
combination of that
Thank you for
That
calculating
number by
that.
itself is 146,000, and then there's some related training costs adjustments to the budget of 75,000 for a total of 221,000.
Got it.
So the total of these items is 3.6 million, and the total adjustments is 3.7 million, so there's another $150,000 approximately in expenditure adjustments that were identified by the department heads as they refined their budgets. So in summary, the change from the 6.38 to the current tax rate change is the result of 5 items: updated information, an accounting methodology change, favorable health care claims experience, favorable benefit resulting from the request for proposal process for health care administration and stop loss, and department head revisions. And as a result of the changes mentioned, the 6.38 tax increase is reduced to 4.36, or an absolute reduction of 2.02%. Now, if
So, Bob, net at the end of page 2, if we look at the 3.6 plus the 1.6, we get the 5.2 in grand total positive contribution toward the budget.
Wait a second.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, do you have a copy of this?
All right.
Okay, yes, there's a negative operational revenue variance of 165,000, middle of page 1.
Yep.
There's a total positive 3,751,000 expenditure positive variance, and then there's a tax collection rate change of 907,000, 908,000 actually, and then the grand list adjustment estimate of $710,000.
Right. So
You
just
add those two together, you get $5.2 million.
right. That's
approximately.
that's just not total there. So that 5.2 makes a lot of sense because if you look at the grand, rough justice, if you look at the $270,000 budget, each percent's about $2.7 million. This is roughly 2%. You're going from 6.4 to 4.4 roughly.
Right.
Okay, I got it.
Okay, now if you want to go to the proposed adjustments, which is something that was distributed to all the town bodies and on the website, I guess, a week or so ago.
Oh, this guy.
Yes, that's,
Yeah, okay.
Mr. Mayor, I do just want to take a moment. I want to be sure that anyone here as members of the public does have this sheet, and sorry for the confusion about that earlier. It's available in the back of the room if you do not have it. And the title of this is Potential Adjustments to Fiscal Year 14 Proposed Budget. In addition, as Mr. Mayor has indicated, this sheet is available on the town website. So the document is accessible to those who are not able to be here to pick it up as well. And thank you for that. I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so then to actually answer your question earlier, theoretically, the health insurance numbers on page 2 of this document, Mr. Kiley?
Yes, please.
So you have 1.3 million.
Yep, I see that.
That's from the experience activity from Board of Ed. Then below that, we have 455130.
Okay.
That is the experience activity for the town, combined with the benefit to the town of the increased employee contribution. And then you have the 343,000 on the Board of Ed side, which is the result of the RFP process. And then below the 455, you have the 400,000 on the town side, which is the result of the process.
That makes perfect sense now, because I thought you said 1.6, but
I
it's...
heard that as well.
It's
when you add the-
1.6 plus 733 or something, or 743, or 1.7 or
It's
something.
1.755. Now, now it makes sense, because you've got 1.3 plus 455,000 on the experience side, so there's the 1.755. And then you've got the 343 plus the 400 on the other side, so you've got the 743 on the administration side.
Right.
So the grand total
2.4
of those
something approximately.
is 2.5.
2.5, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I have it. I'm good. Does that make sense? You have that?
Mm-hmm, absolutely. No,
Okay.
I'm just looking at, did you want to go through any of these other lines, Mr. Mayor? Because I had a question, but I'll let you continue.
Maybe question and answer is the way to go, rather than going through
Okay.
every line if there are questions for some.
That's
Whatever,
fine.
with your pleasure.
So the police department, obviously, we haven't, the adjustment in here for advertising, we had our chief here a few minutes ago talking about that. Just want to point out that that is not included.
Yes, it is. It's a third line item on page 2.
No, the police advertising at 3,500 is included as an adjustment, correct?
Yes.
Right, what they discussed tonight, you may not
Oh.
have been in the room at that point when.
Oh, you mean these new changes? No,
Yes.
this ties to the document that you have that's the 4.36.
Right.
Okay.
There's other now, what's, for example, one of the items that's not in here, if you go to your variance analysis,
Got it.
if you go down maybe line 3, it says bond premium for next year.
It's going the other way.
It's going the other way. What
Yeah.
it means is reducing our bond premium favorable variance this year by keeping 500, instead of using the full $2.6 million to reduce debt payments this year, using 500,000 of that to reduce debt payments next year, which frees up 500,000 in the, which could free up if the boards so decided to act on that. That's another potential. And I know the first selectman is talking with the police, he's talking with the fire, and he's talking with legal. I know there's other conversations going on to see if there's any other potential adjustments that can be offered.
Could I just follow that quickly? So on the variance analysis, we're saying that of the 2.9 current year bond premium benefit, we're going to defer $500,000 of it into,
I'm not saying, that's not included in here because
Yeah, I don't see
variance
that.
announcement was just finished today.
all right, so there's potentially, if this holds true.
Yes, sir.
And we're able to achieve all of these current year objectives and still finish $365,000 to the good, that's inclusive of deferring $500,000 of the bond savings, which could be picked up for next year.
Yes,
That's
sir.
not on this sheet.
Yes, sir.
Got it. Thanks.
Any other departmental adjustments that are still in conversation are also not included? That's what I was clarifying with respect to the police department. And any
I
other-
think that there's some conversations going on with the fire department, with town attorney.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. If we could just for a moment turn to page 3 of this document with the WPCA. It's just something I would like to note. The Water Pollution Control Authority, though this appears as an adjustment, it's an adjustment from the budget book. This was what the authority had originally voted on in terms of their recommending the
Yes,
budget. So
that's my understanding.
I wanted to clarify that.
Thank you.
Any other?
No, I think I'm good with the rest of the schedule, thank you. I don't need to go through each item.
Okay.
I've been through it.
All right,
You've answered my questions, sir.
thank you.
I actually have a question for you, Mr. Mayor, not related to this document, actually. It says
Gotcha.
in your capacity as chief fiscal officer and looking at the budget for next year for the finance department. And let me see if I can get to the right page here in the budget book. Where are we? Any help would be appreciated
Page
if anyone.
50, well, I'll take that back. 147, 148.
Okay, thank you,
Linda.
Mrs. Gardner. Give me a moment to catch up here. Okay. So you had a position that's the secretary for Selectmen was shared in the first Selectman's office,
Yes,
which is currently not filled at the moment, am I correct in that?
correct.
Okay, and your hope and request is that that be filled for next year, along with the corresponding position in the first Selectman's office?
One of the documents handed out today shows the staffing of the towns in Connecticut, population range 55,000 to 85,000. And you'll note that we are far lower than anyone in our relative budget size. Greenwich has 13 or 14. You know, we have like 8.5.
If for some reason this position or the other position were not to be filled, what would the impact be in the department?
I can say right now, everybody's working at superstar effort. I don't know how it's divided, I don't know what you call it, but the salaried people are working an extreme number of hours. I'm talking to some of these other chief financial officers. The demands from this town's first selectman's office and Board of Finance seems to be more intense, which is probably a good thing. It means you guys are really, diving through it all. But as you can also see, we're doing it with a smaller staff than almost everyone, and there's things that we're not doing that we'd like to be doing, like grant accounting and some other stuff. Be able to maybe do a better job on the variance analysis. So it would be tough.
Okay, all right, thank you for that. Any other follow-up questions?
No, I'm good, man.
Okay. All right. And in terms of the documents that were distributed today, I don't think we need to go through. I just will point out also for those, was this document also copied back there? This document is schedule of total property available for taxation, mill rate calculation, gross tax levy, and projected tax revenue. These are
That's this guy.
companion documents.
They're also online and also should be in the back.
Okay, and I wanted to also point out that, yes, it is online together with the other one.
Fantastic.
So, any other follow-up questions that you have for any?
No, I think at the moment, between all the presentations and all the Q&A sessions we've had jointly with the Board of Finance, as well as, individually with department heads along the way and with taxpayers, I think at the moment I am informed enough to move forward and take our next steps in the budget process, which is going to the Board of Finance meeting tonight and hearing some of the same stuff again, but going through that.
I will assume you're there just to hear me again.
Absolutely.
Moral support.
And I think I'm good.
Okay.
And I think at this point, I am, my questions are satisfied at this time.
And I want to thank all those who have come here today to help answer some of the questions that we have. And just point out, I think Mr. Tetro's hope was that we could begin a conversation about the budget and our thoughts on the budget. Selectman Kiley and I agree that doing so without him here would not be very fair to him, and we will, though it was a great idea, maybe next year we can begin that, as the other boards also have an opportunity prior to their voting to have some conversation. So we'll carry on in the tradition that has been in the past years, and when we come together Monday, we'll be discussing and voting on the budget. So
Agreed.
if there is no further business, I'll entertain a motion to
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Tell me, I need to do history.